In this final Project 3 video, we're going to take a look at Excel pivot tables. Pivot tables are one of Excel's most powerful features. A pivot table allows you to extract the significance from a large, detailed data set. In this video, though, we're going to get just a small glimpse of the power of pivot tables. In order to ensure that you begin with a spreadsheet that is usable for creating pivot tables, I've provided you with a spreadsheet to download that is based on what we've been building in this project. So before you begin, go ahead and download that file, which should be linked from this video. And when you download it, you can open it up in Excel. Now, as with anything that you download from the internet, as with any Excel spreadsheet that you download from the internet, that is, it's going to open by default in Protected View. And you've got this yellow bar that says, be careful, files from the internet can contain viruses. Unless you need to edit it, it's safer to stay in Protected View. Well, in our case, we do need to edit the spreadsheet. So let's click on the Enable Editing button. And once you do that, it will open the Excel view that you're used to. So we're going to use the Sales worksheet to demonstrate pivot tables. So let's click on the Sales tab to go to the Sales worksheet. Now make sure that a cell somewhere within the Sales table is selected. You can just click anywhere in the table, and as you see, I've got a cell selected within that table. And that's all you need, because this is a defined table that begins at A1 and goes through K16 or something like that. Excel is going to know exactly what you want to do when you choose to insert a pivot table. So next up, we're going to go to the Insert tab on the ribbon. And you'll notice we have a couple of options here in the Tables group on the tab. The first one is Pivot Table, and the second one is Recommended Pivot Tables. We're going to use Recommended Pivot Tables just because it's going to give us a starting place. So let's click there. And this will give us a few recommendations. Now go ahead and look through these. You notice the first one is Sum of Unit Price by Customer. That one on its own isn't all that helpful because really it's the grand total that we would be more interested in. That would be a helpful one, or the total amount, either grand total or total amount. Here we have the sum of total amount by tax exempt. Now this one could be real handy because we're going to have to send checks to our state's taxing authority, and that's based on the amount of money collected in taxes. But actually it doesn't matter how much money we collected in taxes. What matters is how much money we've received that is for taxable purchases. See, if we collected the wrong amount of tax, we're still going to owe the right amount of tax, despite the fact that we didn't collect it. So this could be very handy, the sum of total amount by tax exempt. So you can see we've collected $194.50 in purchases that are not tax exempt, so we're going to owe our tax on that amount right there. And then we have $136 that we've collected that was tax exempt, so we won't owe any tax on that amount. What else do we have here? Now, you may see different choices here, and that's okay. Sum of tax rate, sum of grand total, sum of something else. Also by tax exempt. And if you go ahead and scroll through the list here, you'll see there are a number of different options. Okay, to get started, let's choose that second one, sum of total amount by tax exempt. And then click OK. Now, as you see, this will actually create a new worksheet with this pivot table on it. So it won't add the pivot table to any of your current worksheets. It's going to create a new worksheet. So right now I've got it named Sheet 1. That was how it came. I'm going to go ahead and remember how we do this. We right-click, click Rename to rename this one, and I'm going to call it Report. Now let's see our pivot table. We've got row labels. We got no, yes, and then blank. We have our grand total down at the bottom. We have the sum of total amount. Okay, well then we've got a little button here. Let's see what that does. That's going to allow us to sort these and also filter. So let's say now we've got both no, yes, and blank, but we only actually care about no because we want to know how much money to send to, in our case, the main revenue service. So let's check the no box. That means they are not tax exempt, which means we are going to owe taxes on them. And click OK. And so now we know the amount that we're going to owe taxes on is $194.50. Now that's not the amount we're going to owe income tax on necessarily. That's the amount we're going to owe sales tax on. Okay, so now let's look in the pane over here that says Pivot Table Fields. And let's see how this works. Now in order to allow me to see the entire the entire Pivot Table Fields pane, I'm going to minimize the ribbon. You probably don't need to do that on your computer, but if you do, you simply click the Ribbon Display Options button up here by the Minimize button. And then we're going to go Auto Hide. And then that's just going to disappear so we can see the entire Pivot Table Fields pane. So we can see the current fields that are in our pivot table are tax exempt and total amount. Now I'm going to put back all of the results so that we can see everything. And again, that was the drop down here, and then I just clicked Select All and then clicked OK. Okay, so what do we have? It says we can choose fields to add to the report, and then it also says drag fields between areas below. So what might we want to do? Well, let's take a look. Let's add product name by checking on it. And now you can see we have our results grouped by tax exempt status, but then within that we can also see the individual products. So for purchases that were not tax exempt, $194.50, $52 of that was blue widget, $120 of that was green cotton, and $22.50 was red widgets. Now what happens if we click on the any of these fields that show up in the rows box? This allows us to move these around so that they're grouped differently. Let's say move down, and now, and that was on tax exempt, I'm sorry, and now we can see we've got things grouped first by product and then by tax exempt status. And if we click tax exempt again, and this time say move to beginning, now they'll be grouped first by tax exempt status. Okay, let's uncheck product name, and let's uncheck tax exempt. And now our pivot table is worth very little right now. Let's say we want to group information by customer. So let's check customer. Automatically we see all the customer names. We still have the sum of total amount, 118 and 212.50. Okay, now let's check product name. So now we've got customer as the main grouping and then product name. Okay, so this is kind of cool. Now, what though what we do if we wanted to look at this a little bit differently. Rather than having product names in the rows as grouped by customer name, what if we wanted to see columns of customer names? As product names. So let's try it. Click on the product name box in the rows box here. Click that and drag it up into the columns box, and then let go. Now you can see we have our customer name, and then we have each of the product names. So Jane Duff bought $10 worth of blue widgets, no green cotton, and $108 of mauve cotton. All together, she bought $118 worth of product. Now, is that correct? Let's go to our sales worksheet and see. Jane Duff. We have 2 orders from Jane Duff. One was for blue widgets, one was for mauve cotton. 108 and 10. And that is exactly it. Now, what if instead of the total amount spent, we actually wanted to look at the quantity ordered? So let's check the quantity box. And let's uncheck total amount. This doesn't make a lot of sense the way it looks right now. So let's drag quantity. So we're going to click and drag quantity from rows over to values. Okay, so now it says Jane Duff bought 1 blue widget, 1 mauve cotton. Joe Blow bought 3 blue widgets, 1 green cotton, no mauve, 2 red widgets. Altogether, 6 items were purchased. Those numbers don't seem right. So let's go back over to sales. Let's see. Let's spot check here. Jane Duff blue widgets. How many blue widgets did Jane Duff buy? She bought 5. But she only made 1 purchase of blue widgets. Now Joe Blow bought 3 blue widgets, according to our pivot table. Joe Blow, blue widgets, he bought 4 here. He bought 7 here. And he bought 15 here. That's way more than 3, but it is 3 separate purchases. So, what's happening? You see, the values have been switched into count. So we have count of quantity rather than sum of quantity, which is what we had, it was sum of total amount before. So how would we fix that? Let's click the little down arrow on the count of quantity box in the values box here, and then click value field settings. Now the value field settings dialog box appears, and it gives us choices to summarize value field by. It says we can choose a type of calculation that we want to use to summarize data from the selected field. So we can use the sum as we had for the total amount. We could use a count as we have right now for quantity. We could use the average, max, min, the product, a number of other options. Now in our case we want to know the total quantity. So let's go to sum. That would mean adding up all those quantities. And then let's look at number format. So we can actually say how we want the numbers to appear. So this would be really handy if, for example, we went back to sum of total amount. We could show that as currency instead of a general number. In our case, though, numbers are fine, or general is fine. Either one of those options would be fine. And then let's click OK. There we go. Now Jane Duff bought 5 blue widgets. Joe Blow bought 26 of them. Does that look right? Joe Blow bought 15. He also bought 7, that's 22, and then he bought 4, that's 26 altogether. Exactly what we're looking for. So as I hope you can see, pivot tables are a very powerful feature. They allow you to drill down very easily into a complex data set. Let's look at one more thing. Let's go back to sales and click somewhere within our sales table. And then if you chose auto hide for the ribbon, go ahead and click the bar that becomes light green highlighted when you mouse over it. If you didn't, then you should see the ribbon there anyway. And now let's click Insert. We're going to look now at charts. And we're going to, so let's go from the Insert tab, we'll go to the Charts group and click Recommended Charts. Now it's going to recommend a number of charts to us. And let's choose the one that says Sum of Grand Total by Customer. Once you've done that, or before you do that, before you do anything else, after you click Sum of Grand Total by Customer, notice down at the bottom it says a clustered column chart is used to compare values across a few categories. Use it when the order of categories is not important. Let's click OK. Now what's happened is it has added yet another new sheet. This new sheet contains a pivot table, and then attached to the pivot table, a pivot chart. And you see if we click the pivot table, the pane over here becomes pivot table fields. If we click back over on the chart, the pane becomes pivot chart fields. And you see we have Sum of Grand Total by Customer. Jane Duff has spent, if we hover the mouse over it, like I'm doing right now, it says value of 118, but of course you can see that that's close to where the column appears. And if we hover over Joe Blow, it says the value is 223.1975, and again, the column is in that region. Notice that we've got the blank column here. What that represents lines in our sales table that are empty. So what if we don't want to see that? That's as easy as using the filter that we looked at in the pivot table in the previous in the report tab. So let's click this drop down next to customer and then uncheck the blank option and click OK. That filters our pivot table, removing the blanks, which also filters our pivot chart to remove the blank column. That way we're only seeing the information on actual customers, not a blank column. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this project. I know I have. I've had fun putting it together for you. Let's save this document. So again, bring up the ribbon, and since we're done with the pivot stuff, let's click this ribbon display options button again and go to show tabs and commands. Now if you didn't auto hide, then you're fine, but since I did, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go to File and Save As. I'm going to choose my OneDrive, and I'm going to choose my Excel folder. And I'm going to save this as Nate2. Click Save. And then don't forget to go to File, Share, and share it with Nate at nateleclaire.com. Simply type Nate at nateleclaire.com in the name or email address field and click share. Now, when you're done with Excel, you want to make sure that you sign out. So to do that, you go to the Account tab, and then you click Sign Out. And then make sure that you close Excel. Alright, that's it for the project. We'll see you next time.